Ready for another deep dive? We're really getting into it today, huh? Diving deep into The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. Um, are you ready to explore the hidden forces behind, what makes us tick?
Let's do it. Greene doesn't mess around. He jumps right in, saying that even the most rational people can fall prey to what he calls high-grade irrationality.
High-grade irrationality. Okay, now you've got me really intrigued. What exactly does that mean?
Well, Greene argues that even when we think we're being totally logical, using our heads, our emotions can kind of take over, and that can lead to, decisions and actions that just don't seem like us.
So it's like when you're arguing with someone and you just lose it, even though you know deep down you're being completely unreasonable.
Exactly. We've all been there, haven't we? He uses this great example of Athenian politicians. They were known for being brilliant strategists, masters of, logic and reason. But their actions, well, they often led to chaos.
So their emotions, their desires and fears, they kind of got in the way of their better judgment.
Precisely. Greene argues those moments of high-grade irrationality, they're often, like a snowball effect. It starts small, like a minor annoyance, and then boom, full-blown anger.
Oh, I've totally been there. But if we're kind of wired for this, how do we avoid falling into that trap ourselves? How can we recognize when our emotions are taking over?
Well, that's where self-awareness comes in. Greene argues that by, just recognizing that we're susceptible to these emotional forces, we can start to create a little space between, what we're feeling and how we act.
So it's about becoming more mindful, more aware of those times when we might say or do something we'll regret.
Exactly. And that leads us to another one of Greene's fascinating ideas, one that might make you a little uncomfortable: the shadow.
The shadow. Okay, now this sounds kind of ominous.
Yeah.
What is the shadow and how does it connect to all of this?
Think of it like the hidden part of our personality. Those desires and impulses, the stuff we deem unacceptable, not just by society's standards, but by our own.
So the stuff we try to keep hidden,
Yeah,
even from ourselves.
exactly. And here's what's interesting. Greene says even our most exaggerated positive traits, they can actually hint at a hidden shadow lurking beneath the surface.
Wait, really? So you're saying someone who's super nice all the time, they might actually be hiding a dark side?
Think of it like a dam holding back a flood. The stronger the outward persona, the more likely there's something powerful being held back, right?
Okay. So if these are parts of ourselves we try to keep hidden, are there situations where our shadow is more likely to come out?
Absolutely. Stress is a big one. Greene talks about how pressure can really crack that facade we work so hard to build, revealing those hidden aspects we'd rather keep under wraps.
And he uses Howard Hughes as an example of this, right?
Right. Hughes, under immense pressure to, deliver this revolutionary aircraft during the war, instead of stepping up to the plate, the stress just, it triggered his shadow.
So all that pressure just caused all his hidden fears and insecurities to rise to the surface.
Exactly. And that brings us to another powerful emotion that can really sabotage us: envy. Greene argues that envy is a lot more common than we think, and we often don't even realize we're feeling it.
Envy? Okay, yeah, I can see how that ties into the whole shadow thing. It's
Yeah.
not exactly something we like to admit, is it?
Nope, not at all. And what's really interesting is how Greene breaks down all the different ways envy shows up. It's not always this big, obvious thing.
So it can be subtle, lurking beneath the surface, disguised as something else.
Exactly. Like, remember the story of Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, and Jane Clairmont? It's a perfect example of how envy can simmer under the surface and really mess things up.
I don't have to tell me more about that. Who
Yeah.
were they, and how did envy play a role?
Well, Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, was married to Percy Shelley, the Romantic poet. And then you have Jane Clairmont, Mary's stepsister, who was, well, deeply envious of Mary.
Okay, so I'm already sensing some drama here. How did Jane's envy manifest itself?
It was subtle. Like, she would compliment Mary, but always with a backhanded edge to it, Or she would constantly point out Mary's flaws, but disguise it as concern.
Wow, that's kind of messed up when you think about it. Those little digs that seem like compliments on the surface. We've all experienced that.
Exactly. And that's what makes Greene's work so insightful. He helps us recognize these subtle but really powerful dynamics that, shape our relationships with others.
So if we're basically wired for envy, how do we learn to recognize it in both ourselves and others before it completely sabotages things? Like, we're really peeling back the layers here, huh? Getting to those instincts we usually try to ignore, but understanding them is got to be the first step, right?
Absolutely. And recognizing it in others is one thing, but Greene, he really pushes us to look inward. Ever felt that pang of envy yourself, like a twinge when someone gets something you secretly want?
Oh, totally. Not always pretty, but I don't know. I think those moments, they can be kind of revealing. Like if we're honest, they show us our own hangups, what we desire deep down, maybe even point us in the right direction.
Exactly. Self-awareness is key, right?
Yeah.
When we own up to our capacity for envy, then we can, like, manage it, even use it to push ourselves further.
So not letting it eat us alive, but turning it into something positive.
Exactly. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about those grandiose types. Greene talks about always a fun one.
Oh, yeah, the grandiose ones, those big personalities that just suck up all the air in the room. Like, I don't know, Michael Eisner comes to mind. He's a prime example, right?
He is
But,
Eisner, former Disney CEO, ambitious, strong personality, the whole 9 yards, believed in his own destiny.
right. But Green points out that belief in being exceptional, it's seductive, but dangerous too, leads to a distorted reality, losing touch with everyone else.
And that's where they often stumble. Wrapped up in their own story, their importance, they forget the people they're supposed to lead.
So how do you deal with them? Just
Right.
let's be real. You're going to run into them everywhere. Work, life, you name it.
Greene's advice is simple but powerful. Don't be blinded by the charisma. It's easy to get caught up in their grand vision, but keep your skepticism. Question their motives, look past the charm, and don't be afraid to stand your ground.
Remembering their reality might not be everyone's reality.
Exactly. And that leads us to a big point Greene makes, cultivating a true sense of purpose. He contrasts those with a real calling versus those chasing, fleeting fame or just money, and the difference is huge.
This is where Green's work gets deep. True purpose isn't about other people's validation. It's about finding what clicks with you, what fuels you, lights you up.
And his examples are so on point. Look at Martin Luther King Jr., driven by a deep sense of purpose, a belief in justice and equality. That fueled everything he did.
And that purpose, that inner compass, it gave him strength, right, to keep going when things got really, really tough.
Absolutely. When we're aligned with our purpose, we tap into this resilience, a determination that carries us through anything.
But how do you even know what your purpose is? It's not like it's handed to you at birth, right?
Yeah, Greene gets that. He talks about true purposes versus false purposes, those things that seem tempting but end up leaving you empty.
Like going after money, power, that fleeting fame. Looks good from the outside, but no real substance.
Bingo. Those false purposes, they often come from needing other people's approval. Our self-worth is tied to some external measure of success.
But true purpose, it's got to come from inside, aligning with our values, the stuff that makes us feel alive.
Yes. And Greene gives us ways to tell the difference. Self-reflection is huge. Question your motives. Ask yourself, what really matters? What kind of mark do I want to leave?
Man, those are big questions. Sounds like a lifelong journey figuring that out.
It is, and Greene's honest about that. This journey takes guts, honesty, and being willing to face our own self-deceptions,
He also talks about mentors, right?
Yeah.
Having people who guide us, challenge us, keep us on track.
He does. Like Coco Chanel, crazy successful,
Right.
right? But she still sought guidance, especially on the business side.
Even the best need support.
100%. We can't do it alone. Which brings us to another big one, time. Not just how it passes, but how it shapes us, our choices, even our legacies.
Time, something we just take for granted. But you're saying it's a lot deeper than that, huh?
Way deeper. Greene says our brains are wired for short-term thinking, immediate gratification, the here and now.
Which makes sense, right? Like way back when you had to focus on immediate threats. But now that can keep us stuck, always reacting, never reaching those long-term goals.
Exactly. Emails, notifications, scrolling, it's endless.
Yeah.
And we forget about the big picture.
Just reacting, not acting with like intention.
Right. And Greene argues that modern life makes it even harder. Youth, novelty, instant gratification, it's everywhere we look.
So how do we escape that cycle? How do we have a healthier relationship with time?
Greene's got a few ideas. First, connect with your own mortality. Now, hold on. Before you think it's morbid, hear me out. He's not saying dwell on death, but use it as a lens, Appreciate how precious life is.
Okay, so realizing our time is limited can actually push us to make the most of it.
Exactly. This death awareness, it can be freeing. No more being terrified of failing or pleasing everyone else. We can finally focus on what matters, live in the moment.
That is a powerful shift in perspective.
It is, and Greene doesn't stop there. He talks about legacy. Now, that might sound like it's just for, historical figures, but Greene says we all have a legacy.
Legacy. What does that even mean for the average person?
Think about your impact on the world. Could be through work, relationships, how you treat people, how you show up each day.
So recognizing our actions have ripples, that we're all part of something bigger.
Precisely. When our purpose goes beyond our own needs, that's powerful. It fuels us.
Knowing we can make a difference, even in small ways.
Yeah, and it's not about like curing cancer, even
No.
small acts of kindness, being creative, showing courage, those things matter. They ripple outwards.
Totally. It's so easy to compare ourselves, feel insignificant. But Greene's saying even the little things have an impact.
100%.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads us to another big one, power dynamics. Greene doesn't shy away from this at all. How power's gained, used for good or bad, in relationships, society, the whole shebang.
Power dynamics. Yeah, kind of touchy subject, right?
Yeah.
We all see it at work, with friends, even random encounters, but we don't always address it head on.
Exactly. Greene wants us to be aware of these dynamics,
Mm.
because when we understand how power works, even the subtle stuff, it helps us avoid being manipulated, wield our own influence better, that kind of thing.
So where do we even start with something as, I don't know, complex as power?
Greene breaks it down, shows us the tactics people use to grab hold of power and keep it. One thing that's super interesting is he talks about nonverbal cues. Masters of persuasion, they're tuned into that stuff.
Nonverbal cues, you mean like body language, how you say things, facial expressions, all
So
that?
exactly, we say more with our bodies than our words sometimes, right? And if you can read those signals, you've got an edge.
So it's not just what you say, but how you say it. Even down to your posture, your eyes, all those micro expressions we make.
Exactly. Greene talks about how those little things can convey so much. Confidence, honesty, or even dominance.
It's like we're all sending out these signals, consciously or not, and if you know what to look for, you can read people like a book.
Exactly. And one tactic Greene talks about that always gets me is mirroring. Subtly copying someone's behavior, their words, even their energy can create this like instant connection.
Mirroring, like when you're talking to someone and find yourself matching their posture without realizing it.
Exactly. But Greene says people can do it on purpose too, to manipulate. By mirroring you, they build rapport, get you to let your guard down.
Okay, that's both cool and creepy, right? This hidden language of persuasion.
Right. Greene's work is so eye-opening, though. He reveals these unconscious things so we can be more aware.
So it's not just about recognizing it in others, but in ourselves too, even the stuff we do without realizing.
Exactly. Self-awareness is key. Now, Greene doesn't shy away from the dark stuff either. He gets into how people use guilt, playing the victim, even faking illness, to get power over others.
Wait, seriously, faking sick, just to get someone to do something.
Sounds wild, but Greene says it happens more than you'd think, especially in relationships.
Hmm.
They're playing on your empathy, your desire to help, even if it costs you.
So even if it's not always conscious, it's still manipulation.
Exactly. And that's why understanding this stuff is so important, so we can set boundaries, recognize when it's happening to us, and make better choices in our relationships.
Protecting ourselves, taking back control.
100%. Look, at the end of the day, Greene's work is about making us more conscious, understanding human nature so we can navigate it all. The relationships, the power struggles, even our own internal battles.
Wrapping up this deep dive into the laws of human nature, I gotta say, this is a lot to process. Challenging, but insightful.
Right. Greene doesn't sugarcoat anything. He shows us the good, the bad, and everything in between.
It reminds us we're all in this together, right?
Mhm.
Our own struggles, our own goals, but all connected.
Well said. And as you think about all this, ask yourself, how can we use this understanding to connect better with people, face challenges head on, and maybe, just maybe, leave things a little better than we found them?
Now that's a question worth thinking about. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep.